I'd like to welcome you to our July 13th, 2022 regular meeting of a governing board. Welcome, and Mrs. Nye, could you start us off with our roll call, please?
Barb Moston.
Here.
Jason Collins.
Here.
Laura Bruner.
Here.
Lindsay Blount.
Here.
Joel Hort.
Here.
Thank you. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have a little routine business to attend to. So our first is to approve the minutes for our June 22nd, 2022 regular meeting of the governing board. Could I please get a motion for that?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd, 2022 regular board meeting as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 The motion carries. Next, we have to approve and ratify our payroll and accounts payable vouchers. Could I get a motion, please?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve and ratify payroll and accounts payable vouchers.
Second.
All those in favor of approving and ratifying payroll and accounts payable vouchers, please say aye.
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 The motion carries. Mr. Narducci, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Madam President, there's no correspondence at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will be having our public hearing on the 22-23 school budget. It's the district annual proposed expenditure budget, and Mrs. Lana Berry will be conducting the hearing. Mrs. Berry.
Well, good evening, Governing Board and members of the audience. Tonight is the hearing for the adopted expenditure budget for fiscal year 22-23. We're going to cover a number of things tonight related to this upcoming budget. Now, remember, our fiscal year goes from July 1st through June 30th. So we just entered into our next fiscal year where we welcomed brand new teachers back this past week, and we're going to start school next week. So we're excited. The budget covers this new fiscal year that we are entering into. So right off the bat, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the legislative updates and some budget highlights related to that. We'll discuss the changes between the fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget that I brought to you in June and the adopted one, because there is going to be some changes because the legislature finished so late this year, and so there's a change in that. We're going to discuss that. And then we're going to talk about the difference that we always talk about, the adopted budget versus last year's budget, because that's really what makes sense to everybody is, okay, how much more money do we have this year compared to last year? What are those changes? We're going to consider all the different changes that we have in there. And then we're going to talk about the proposed tax rate and history, and we're going to review the aggregated budget teacher, the average teacher salary that's posted on our website, part of the cover sheet that has to not only be outlined on our website, but uploaded to the State Department. And then we'll cover the reports that are coming up and the revisions that you'll see this fiscal year. So we have a huge historical investment, as you all know, in the K-12 system that just was approved at the very end of June. It finally got approved right before the deadline for this fiscal year 22-23. And as you all know, there was a huge surplus in the state funds, and there was a lot of negotiation based on a number of needs across our state, K-12 being one of those. So this, you'll see that's outlined. These are all the major updates to the K-12 budget. It started with an increase of $526 million across the state in the base. So the base means how much money we get per child. We all get that. Doesn't matter if you live up in Page or you live down in Yuma, you get a certain amount per pupil. And in a sense, that went into the base. So it's $526 million, and it's ongoing. So that part is what I think people were fighting for a lot, was to make sure that it was ongoing and continual in that base. There was $100 million for special education, and they were put into specific weight groups that majority of us have, when majority of our students fall under about 5 categories. And so we increased that. Kim Marshall, actually Dr. Marshall, our Director of Special Education, has been a big part of that over the last couple of years, determining where to put that money and fighting for those dollars. So we have $100 million going in, and it will grow over the next 2 years to $104 million, $109 million. As you all know, we've been fighting for opportunity weight, which is a fund that was started right before COVID. We discussed that where schools who have higher poverty have more needs. And so there would be a weight that would come out, because right now you don't get funding based on that. And so there would be a small weight in there to help students, and they're across every school district and in every school, so it'd be funded in a sense per child. And so there's additional money for students who, with poverty. There's an extra amount per child. With that amount, it starts at $50 million and then grows to $100 million in the next year after next year. $50 million additional for SROs that will be funded, and any leftover money can go to counselors and social workers. That's a grant funded, so it's not just allocated to us. We'd have to apply for that. $60 million in district additional assistance called DAA or DA, and then charter school, CAA, for charter school additional assistance. The first year, it's $60 million, and then year 2, $89 million and $118 million. The difference between public schools and charter schools right now is that public schools have not gotten an increase in capital on inflation in years where charter schools have kept up with inflation, and they've gotten that increase on their capital dollars. So now we both will get an increase related to inflation on those capital dollars. So $60 million this year. $58 million for school improvement. This is a grant, a specific amount that goes in, very similar to Project Rocket. It's to help schools. They would apply for it when schools are in school improvement, would help them with different resources to help those local schools. Session law changed. As you know, when I came to you and I told you the proposed budget, we had made adjustments based on what we thought the governor was going to give, and we did some predictions with you in June. They actually put into session law, because you weren't usually able to take your proposed budget and make a change, especially related to the taxes. So they allowed this with session law. They allowed you to adjust your budgets to encompass these changes for a tax levy. So we wanted to make sure we updated all of our budgets so that we made sure our tax rate was appropriate and was exactly with the new allocation, matched it specifically. We got pretty close when we did our estimates, but we finalized that. There's a couple other things. There was a commitment by the governor to call for a special session to get a finalization on Prop 208. So that was a commitment that was made during the legislature. And then $65 million to help pay the K-12 rollover. As you know, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars. It used to be almost $1 billion. They had an initiative to pay it down $30 million each year, but our state had borrowed that money. We get it paid in the next year for the previous year, and so we're just trying to reduce that debt. It's the state, when during the Great Recession, had an issue, did not have enough money to fund all the programs they had budgeted for, and so they borrowed the next year's education dollars to pay for this year's education dollars. So that's to start paying that debt off. It was from when the Great Recession took place in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Additional money for a gifted assessment that will go to the state, and then roughly about $1 million for Earn While You Learn. Again, some of those are related to applications or grant dollars, and then $93 million in supplementals for school facilities this fiscal year, which is related to our building renewal dollars. They want to add 93 to last year's amount, because that's how much need they had, and then they'll budget $183 million for next year. Now again, that's $183 million for all 225 school districts across the state, so that would be less than $1 million in a sense if it were allocated for building renewal. So it goes quickly when schools apply for it. It's mostly roofs and HVAC issues, and it goes very quickly. You have to pretty much, it has to be not working, or the roof has to be in really bad shape for that to get replaced. We apply for that all the time, and we're fortunate to get some of those too, but it goes quickly. So a couple things on the budget highlights for our levy funds. Our levy funds are our tax funds brought in typically through property tax or sales tax. The state, and I think one misconception people have is that we as the district set the tax rate in the sense of what it can be and how much we can tax our property taxes. That's actually not the way that it goes. What happens is the legislature sets the qualifying tax rate every year. It's based on assessed value. If assessed value goes up, the qualifying tax rate comes down. If assessed values go down, the qualifying tax rate goes up, and the legislature votes on that this year. Since assessed values across the state has went up, the qualifying tax rate has came down. So the qualifying tax rate that the legislature approved, which is on your primary tax, is 0.1122. So it went from $3.53 to $3.42. The base support level increase, that's where you saw the big increase that our state gave us with that $526 million. We went from $4,445, now we're at $4,775. That number's compared a lot across the nation. It's one of the reasons Arizona is in one of the 48th, 49th in the nation, is a lot based on the amount that they give us in our base and the amount that they give us for capital in that area. So our total base support level increase was approximately 7.42%. It was a little bit more than that. It was a total of 8.76% for inflation, but they took away this portion called it's teacher compensation. It's this extra portion of 1.25, so that's why the net is 7.42. They did give us an additional amount for teacher experience index. They didn't take that away. They were fighting to take that away, and it continued. So we didn't get an increase from the state, but because our teachers, we have a higher amount of years of service for our teachers. They've been here longer and have a longer longevity than the majority of the state. We get an increase for that because obviously it's related to typically their salaries, which means that their salaries are typically higher than the others across the state. So that went up slightly. SPED funds we got additional money in the Group B funds, and it's specifically for 5 particular areas. That went up, and it's going to support some of our special ed needs across the district. We've been fighting for that for a couple of years. We got $50 million last year, going to get another chunk this year. And then the poverty weight, that's going to impact us. Every child gets approximately about $85 per kid, or a weight of 0.018. And then the transportation, we keep getting an increase on that. Related, that was part of Prop 301 and that loss, and also the voter initiative of Prop 301, so we get an increase in our transportation. A couple other things, as you know, this is the district additional assistance piece. It went up, so grades preschool through 8 get around $502 now. Grades 9 through 12 get $549, and then there's an extra supplement for textbooks, in a sense, for $77.65. So an increase for us that we haven't seen in years. We're finally fully funded in capital at the base that we were a couple decades ago, and now we're starting to get interest on that. Prop 301 actually decreased from $733 to $708, but that's actually a lot of money because when we, 2 years ago, we were at around $427. Last year, we had $521 was ongoing, and the other portion was one time. And this year, it's up to $708. Again, sales tax, we're thriving. Arizona is doing extremely well. And so our sales tax dollars came in at the very end of March, and we're at $708. On the non-levy funds, so not our tax-generated funds that are for property tax or sales tax or income tax from our state, but our cash funds or our federal and state grants that are out there. Building renewal, we'll continue to apply for that. There's a chunk out there. We'll also apply if there's any additional money for school safety grants that can go towards SROs or counselors. Dr. Gilbert and his team has done an excellent job of applying for that, and we have dollars coming in for those. We'll continue to apply for that. Grants for school improvement, again, anything that we're eligible for, we'll continue to apply for. We get the most money for results-based funding. Our kids do fantastic here in Chandler, very proud of our school district and the results that we get. And the number of schools that we get results-based is the most in the entire state. With our governor, we're going to continue that for another year. So right now, we only have what we're carrying over, but we'll get an allocation this year. We're still waiting on our college career credits by exam, which is the AP exams. We wait for that allocation and the results base this year. So all you're going to see in the budget this year is the carryover. And then when we revise the budget, you'll see those changes. A change in food nutrition. There's the elimination of the universal free. So our families, we've been sending out communication on that. There's not going to be universal free breakfast and lunch like they have seen over the last couple of years. It changed and will go back. However, there is a change where students who are on reduced are automatically free. So we'll have free or paid, but we have changed our budget to reflect that. A couple things that has changed since we talked in the proposed budget. As the budget was approved at the very end of June, ADE, because there was session law that said you could change your budget between the proposed and the adopted, allowed us to update our budgets, and we needed to do that by August the 1st. And that way we can make sure that our tax rates were accurate and set. So just put the information from the Arizona Department of Education about us educating you on what the differences were between proposed and adopted, and then being able to make that change. So what was the difference between what we presented in June versus tonight? The proposed budget for maintenance and operations was $348 million. It has gone up to $365 million. So that's an increase of $17 million. Now remember, we had originally put in what we thought the governor was going to include, which was inflation, and then we thought we took into consideration our override allocation because originally we thought that it would have to be based on the proposed tax, would be based on our proposed budget, so we'd increase those two items in that budget. So now this is the increase of $17 million compared to what you saw with the proposed budget. Unrestricted capital went from $40,837,000 to $43 million, so it's an increase of $2.4 million. Our federal programs did not change, so $60.8 million. We didn't make any changes between the proposed and the adopted. So the total aggregated budget, you see that on the cover sheet when you review it, or in the summary. If you were to look at a Department of Education and go onto their website and look at any school district, you have access as a public member or a school board member to go on and look at any district you want in the state, and you can go and look at everybody's aggregated expenditure limits and the summary of all their funds. What was the difference in the tax rate? There only was a slight change. The primary tax did not change because that's based on the qualifying tax rate, and then for us, we also have some adjacent ways and dropout prevention that's part of that. And then the secondary is your overrides and your bonds. And because of that, once we updated the new base support level, that slightly changed. It went from 2.36 to 2.39, so a difference of 0.002. So there was a slight increase in that change between the proposed and the adopted. Not much.
Question, Lena.
Yes.
So what does the 2.3691 mean? Is that 2.36% or what is it?
Yes, so great question. So if you think of a $100,000 home, even though there's not a $100,000 home in Chandler, if you think of a $100,000 home, that would cost someone $2.79 a year on a $100,000 home. So almost $3. On $200,000, that would be $6, and on $300,000, that would be $9. So that's the difference in that. Just a slight change, so not a very big change on that piece. Does that help? All right, so we like to always compare, and in every presentation you can go back to look at, we like to compare what is this adopted budget compared to last year, because really, what are the differences? When the legislature finalized it, what is the difference between this year and last year? So last year, when you revised the budget in fiscal year 21-22, you had a budget of $338 million. The adopted budget now is $365 million, so our M&O increased $27 million. Our unrestricted capital went from $34 million was our revised. Our adopted is $43 million, so an increase of $8.4 million. We're going to go over the specifics of each of these in a minute. Federal projects, the change was between $60,857,000 and $60,896,000 is $39,000. So our total aggregated budget of $434 million compared to this year of $469 million and is an increase of $35 million. All right, so let's discuss some of those changes. We have estimated a projected increase in our ADM. I was looking at numbers today, our high schools are going up. Every single one of our grade levels, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th are up compared to last year. And we have projected and thought that they would increase. Our elementaries are down and our junior highs are flat or slightly down. And so overall, we're projecting an increase. We will revise that because we're based on current year funding. So now today we get funded based on the number of kids that come. And so we think we'll increase by about 150 to 200 kids. We have an increase in our M&O and capital funds, obviously the additional allocation that the state gave us. We also have new expenditures. We had expenditures that we approved through the Super Q, which is our meet and confer process, and through our MP 5000s, which stand for new programs that are over $5,000, and some of the other recommended budget adjustments that our superintendent approved through the process. We have an increase to Prop 301 as our overall budget went up, and we're going to talk about the carryover because we have a slight increase in our carryover also. And then we're going to talk a little about some of the increases and decreases in our cash funds. So our ADM, here's our ADM, 2012-13. We had 38,000, and as you can see, we were growing and growing. And then our COVID year was 42,614. You can see that. Last year, we actually had more students enrolled, But because our students, we weren't able to count our students who are online at full capacity, and if they didn't turn in the full minutes, we only got partial capacity and partial payment for them. So we actually had more students enrolled, but our ADM was slightly less. So, and that's the reason is because we had a lot more online students last year, and we couldn't count them as full, where then before they had been counted as a full FTE or at least a 0.95. We do see an increase this year by approximately a little over 240 students. Compared to our 22-23 adopted budget, how do we compare that to the revised? So we saw that increase earlier of $27 million. So let's talk about how we got there. The base support level is equivalent to $18 million. So that's 7.4% increase to the base. That brings us an additional $18.8 million. The projected increase in ADM is approximately $1.6 million. Our override is based on last year's number of kids, but this year's base support, that's equivalent to $3.2 million. Our teacher experience index is equivalent to $2.4 million. We have a slight decrease between our registered warrants, some of our adjustments in our Prop 123 funding, and our amount that we're bringing in for tuition from outside sources. We decreased by about $521,000. With that increase that we talked about in special education and due to poverty weights, that was an increase of $4.2 million. And so total overall carry forward budget that we think we're spending, we didn't exceed our budget this year, but we're dipping into some of our carryover dollars that we had. That was approximately 2.9. We have $27 million new to our budget to spend on either our 5,000 employees or the needs of our 40-plus schools. We also, our district additional assistance, the allotment, because of the increase, went up $2.2 million, and we had an additional carryover based on $6.1 million. So our total increase in capital is $8.4 million. So some of the new expenditures that you already approved were originally, we had given raises of 2 to 4%. 2% was to administration and certified, 4% to our classified. That went out last spring, and that equivalent is $5.1 million. So we've already given that piece out. We have insurance and retirement increases of $771,000. We have a retention stipend, which is just one time. That's going to come out of some of our carryover dollars, which was related to some of our federal dollars of $1,000, and that was part of the meet and confer process. That's $5.8 million. We have utility increases of $243,000. We had ongoing requests of new positions or supplies, salaries, purchase services, things like that, of $2.5 million. We had requests for one time of $7.5 million for two main areas. One, for additional wages, but also for stipends for special education. So that was for our SPED staff to get a $1,500 stipend and an additional $1,500 stipend. And then capital, $2.4 million for some additional needs at some of our schools throughout the district. So Prop 301 changes. As you know, we decreased, but it's really the overall amount fixed and ongoing is going to be $708, but our overall amount in Prop 301 actually went up, not down. So all funds are now in Fund 10. It used to be reported in 3 different funds. Now they're all reported in one fund. And now we can include all certified staff. We used to not be able to include all certified staff. Now we can. So that's an encouraging thing. It used to be you could only include a classroom teacher. You might not be able to include a teacher that was outside, or a speech pathologist, or a physical therapist, or a nurse, or different things like that that sometimes were on the certified salary schedule. You can do that now. And you can include all of those that are in that classification of who you deem in that classification. We also, a part of it in the past, we had to separate out performance pay, and we ultimately gave that out at the end of the fiscal year. Now, almost every district is moving that performance pay into the base contract, and so you're seeing that as part of the overall contract, and we did the same. We moved 2/3 of that into the contract, and we kept a small portion out for performance pay. So overall, those were the changes approximately. And the kids, again, the increase for Prop 301, $8.7 million. Most of that was from carryover because we actually had a decrease from $733 to $708. Couple other important things, as I talked about before, we moved that $2,500 on the salary schedule into the contract to help, because now our contract is over $50,000 for starting wage. I think our average is over $60,000 for certified staff. Our performance pay is $700, and then we've also agreed to a couple different stipends with our certified group of a retention stipend of $1,000, a one-time payment because of the additional amount in there of $1,500, and then the ability to access 8 hours of professional development for $1,500. So it's going to be really important for us, though, to plan for Prop 301. 2 years ago, sales tax was around $427 per pupil, and now we're up to $708. We need to make sure that we keep at least about $542 in there, in a sense, per student, to be able to fund the fixed and ongoing amounts for contracts, a little bit of professional development, and that performance pay piece if we take out the one-time stipends. So overall, here's our budget. We had a carryover of $30 million. Our revenue is $37 million. Our expenditures that are ongoing are $28 million. We have expenditures of one-time of $11 million, which project our carryover at $28 million. Now again, we can dip into that pretty quickly if sales tax drops drastically, and so we want to make sure this only can be put in this fund for teachers, and it stays in this fund, but it allows us to help ride whatever sales tax would be. And again, we review this. We can always spend more out of it if we need to, but again, it's dedicated just to teachers. Other funds, bond funds, this increased, if you look at on your budget compared based on prior sales, less completed projects, and so we have projects that already are completed, and until we sell again, and then we'll increase that budget, but right now it's based on the projects that we have left. We have no new money coming in from the School Facilities Board as we just finished our last high school, so no money in that. Community education overall, there's an increase. Stephanie Howell and her team have done a fantastic job of finding grants. They've gone after millions of dollars worth of grants, and we continue to get, I think, another $5 million grant in community education. And so her and her staff have done a fantastic job of securing dollars and then making sure that we're still servicing as many students as we can. We're doing a great job this summer servicing kiddos, and plan on doing a great job at our schools again this fiscal year. Food service budget, overall decrease in this. And again, our food service department has done a fantastic job this last year of servicing kids. We have serviced more kids than we ever have because of the universal free lunch. We had to make some adjustments for that, and you honored the new contract just recently, but the universal feeding program goes away, and the criteria will just be free in the future. Some of our orders for equipment have been delayed. It's been a big frustration on that. Just as you know, supply chains are a big issue. And so we're going to have to purchase those out of next year, so some of the changes in the budget on that. Other cash funds have increased and decreased. You're going to see that student activities, auxiliary student activities, now that kids are traveling again and extracurricular activities are going, you're going to see an increase in those funds. You're going to see a decrease in some of our IGA funds just based on expenditures we have or revenues coming in. We have in our indirect and our CTE funds, you're going to see an increase because we're doing some renovation projects as we're expanding our CTE over at Chandler High School. Our SEI fund, that's our kids with ELL issues and needs. They're based on a calculation and a form, and I asked a few questions. I know Mr. Olive, you had a question about ELL. And our number of students are reported to the state, and then there's a formula that's put together for our SEI funds. Some of that is due to sometimes there's an issue with reporting ELL kids, but it's also based on a calculation that goes to the state, and then it gets divided based on the number of students. But that has decreased. We see a fluctuation, an increase and a decrease of that over the years. Other cash funds, again, if you were to look at a couple of the pages in the budget, you're going to see increases and decreases just based on needs or the revenues that are coming in. Federal and state grants, there are a few changes, but not too much. Most of them you're going to see when we talk about it in the revised budget after the annual financial report is finished in October. We have our biggest grant that we have, as you know, is ESSER 3, and that doesn't expire until 2024, so we're utilizing those dollars. Results-based funding, right now you're only going to see the carryover in there, and we're waiting on the new allocation. Our college credit by examination incentive program, same thing, you're going to see the carryover, and we're waiting on the new allocation for that. And then we're going to be applying for school safety program grants this year as those dollars come available. Probably the largest change that you're going to see is in E-rate, and we had applied with Colleen Flannery and her team and Lauren Randall. We applied for a huge $6 million grant. Under our E-rate, we were able to purchase thousands of devices for our students, and that was for 1 year. And so we applied last year, and that fund is not available for new allocation this year. So the changes, with the new legislative changes, the one thing we haven't brought back to you is the new expenditures. And so one thing that you're going to see is that we're finishing, we'll meet with Super Q this week to meet with our classified and our certified staff members to finalize a raise based on that new allocation. But what we did was we added a line item to match our expenditures in instructional for regular and for special education, so that because you have to match your expenditures with your aggregated budget limit. And so, but now we'll be prepared to allocate those dollars to salaries and benefits and to programs that we need, especially in special education or other needs that we have across our district based on those new dollars. And we'll be able to do that and then bring back to you on the 27th of July a package for the increase in raises. So again, you should see an increase to classified, certified, and administrators. You will see potentially a market adjustment raise, potentially, and then some additional potential ways to sustain some of our one-time funding, stipends maybe, or other things in the future. The tax rate is the next thing to discuss and cover. Last year's tax rate was 6.0780. The primary tax was 3.7, you can see, and then the primary tax this fiscal year is 3.5. So obviously it decreased, and it matches almost exactly to the state decrease overall. In that, remember, when assessed values go up, the qualifying tax rate goes down, and that hits the primary tax rate. The secondary rate slightly went up between last year and this year, and most of that's due because our override is now based on the new allocation, which inflation increased by 7.42%, plus those SPED increases made it to where our secondary override amount went up because the new base support level went up. But overall, there is a tax rate decrease. All right, so here is our overall for 3 years. I always like to show you where our tax rates are. In 2021, we were at 6.4. Last year, we were at 6.07. This year, we're at 5.96. So what are those changes? We're going to see a decrease in of about 11 cents overall due to the qualifying tax rate. That's the main issue. Our truth in taxation, which is our adjacent ways, and there is a portion of dropout prevention that's always been in there for $107,000, but most of that is in your adjacent ways. We had $2.5 million last year, $2.5 million this year. The adjacent ways portion is slightly down because assessed values are up, so that's why you see a decrease in that, even though the dollar amount is the exact same. Our override increased, and that was due to, again, mostly due to the base going up because of inflation and that base support level increasing. The bonds increased. That went from $1.19 to $1.21. And that's based on what we sold last year when we sold the bonds, but also this is less than what our voter pamphlet said. So I know Mrs. Majani had a great question about what does that compare to the voter pamphlet, and the voter pamphlet was $1.29. So that is a decrease. It's not as high as what we thought it could be. So again, people are going to anticipate their house values are going up. It's capped at 5%, but ultimately the tax rate's gone down, but people might see a tax increase on their individual bill because their assessed values in their houses have gone up, but it is capped at 5%. We are the second lowest tax rate out of the East Valley schools. Gilbert has a slightly less of a tax rate than us last year. You can see this was in 2020-21. And then in this year, you can see Gilbert has a slightly less of a tax rate than we do. Most of that is related to our bonds. They don't have as many bonds outstanding as we do. Some of the differences when you look at school districts and why, our primaries are all pretty close unless there's adjacent ways in those or that have a high adjacent ways sometimes. But also an M&O and capital, it's all based on the assessed value of your community. And if you're a bedroom community of just homes, you don't have very much to tax, where if you're a community, we're very fortunate. We have the price corridor and we have commercial properties, so we have more to assess, so therefore that tax rate is less. And so that's why you're going to see sometimes that fluctuation in the override, especially, and within your bonds. But again, we're the second lowest still in the East Valley, and we're very thankful for the price corridor and the commercial properties we have, along with the homes and the build out in our district. So overall, estimated tax liability, we've been doing this for years. Mr. Worth had started this years ago, and here's where a property that's worth $329,000 assessed value, $421,000, $114,000, and $316,000. 16. Again, assessed value-wise, the amount goes up, but one thing I want to say is that the county tax is going away. So you're going to see a reduction of about 30 cents, I think it is, per household, because the county tax went away, which was about a $300 million savings to the state. So overall, it might wash out between the county tax and that slight increase in taxes due to assessed values jumping so much. So again, what you're approving tonight is the aggregated expenditure budget. It's on the cover sheet. You're approving an aggregated budget of $469,000. That includes 3 important funds. It includes the Maintenance Operations Fund, the Unrestricted Capital Fund, and your Federal Projects Fund. It doesn't include all your other funds like Food Service or Civic Center, but those are the main funds that are part of the aggregated expenditure budget. That's the front sheet. You sign that. That's part of that, and that's where our taxes are based off of. The other important thing is we are required on the bottom of that to show what our average teacher salary is. Right now, our average teacher salary for 23 is $63,000. But I put a big note that this is obviously going to change, because as the board comes back to approve salaries increases on the 27th of July, then we will change this and it will be uploaded, and then we will produce this on our website. But right now, with the raise that we gave back in the spring, that's currently where our average is. The last slide that I have is what are upcoming reports and revisions. The tax credit to the county schools office reports are due, so we have to send those off. We sent it off with the proposed budget. Now we're required to send off it with the adopted budget. It goes to the Property Tax Oversight Committee in July, and then the county finalizes all of our taxes by August of 2022. So that's why there was session law to allow us to make the changes that we did and that we're changing tonight. We have an encumbrance period now to pay off last year's bills for the next up to 60 days from July 1st for 60 days. And then we finish our completion reports, which are all of our grants, by September 30th. And we'll bring back to you the annual financial report from last year. And then we will bring back to you a revision of this year's budget in December and in May of 2023. So that's what you can look forward to seeing from us in the next 12 months. All right, that is all the that is all the slides I have. What questions do you have?
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. That was very thorough. I do have one or two questions. Our transportation support is going up 2.2%, but fuel has gone up probably at least 50%. I can't even tell you how much it has. And how is that going to impact our transportation department and all?
Right, so the only factor in transportation is the increase in, from Prop 301 where it said inflation, so you get in a sense the 2% or inflation, so it's up slightly over the 2%. So it doesn't adjust in transportation. We have to use other dollars. Now, we're going to use our Civic Center dollars that we bring in and which we charge our schools for extracurricular activities because those aren't funded by the state. We'll utilize those dollars and the money in transportation. We can also use, if needed, our federal dollars because of that. So we will manage between all of those funds until hopefully we see a decrease in that diesel price. But we're seeing it also in supplies. It's not even just gas. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that parts are really significantly being impacted. We're also having a hard time hiring bus drivers right now, as you know, with the issues across. So we're having a problem hiring bus drivers. We're also having a hard time, you're going to see tonight, we're ordering more buses. We're still waiting on the buses you approved over a year ago. So they're having problems getting supplies and their prices are going up. And unfortunately, our state has not adjusted for transportation except for that small, tiny amount.
And the other question I have is, I notice that on all of our tax bills, if it is your primary residence, you get an equalization credit on your tax bill, which is for the schools. And as you look at these various tax rates, are they going to be maintaining the same percentage of the equalization credit as they have in the past, or is that changing?
I believe that's the same, but that's a great question. Let me research that and get back to you. I believe it's the exact same, but I'll research that and find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, thank you. And I think we now move on to our public hearing and truth in taxation notice of tax increase. Or I guess I should ask if there's any questions in the audience. Would you go up to the microphone?
Yes, thank you. My name is Kurt Roars. I'm a parent in this district and also a taxpayer. The question I had was that the district has over $100 million in cash funds on reserve with the county treasurer's office. This appears to be excessive. What are your plans for these funds? Can they be used to reduce the discretionary amount the district draws from taxpayers with their override authorization? Thank you.
Sure. Great question, Mr. Rohr. So we do have an amount in every single one of our funds for carryover unless the state doesn't allow us to carry over. So there are a few funds, for example, when a state grant comes through, you cannot carry over any dollars in certain specific state grants. So we know all the grants and funds that we can carry over. We do carry over a portion in M&O and capital and Prop 301 and in our cash funds. We're not as significant as a nonprofit. A nonprofit would say that they want 180 days of operating costs, and that's a baseline, right? They would love to have 240 or 360 days worth of operating costs. If you go out to any nonprofit and you ask them, what do you want in your reserves? We don't hold that much. We would love to get to a point where we have 15% of our dollars, all of our aggregated amounts in our bank, so that if there is a recession, we're able to continue the services that we need. We do want to come up with a plan. I know Mr. Worth has asked for this to say we can spend up to X amount of our contingency per year on one-time amounts and not exceed that so that we have it for the future. We don't have a policy in place for that now, but we'd love to see overall, if you took all of our funds, as a CFO, if you're looking for an opinion of how much I think we should have about 15% in case that recession happened. As you know, if you were to look at Prop 301, we're at $708, but a handful of years ago, we were at a little over $100. So we have to be really careful with that. Also, as you know, during the Great Recession, they took all of our capital away. We went down to 20%. And so now we're fully restored, but if we go through the recession again, that potentially can happen again. So if the question is how much should we reserve, we'd love to have up to 15%. We don't quite have that overall at this point, but we would love to have that for the future and then be able to have a policy that says you can only spend maybe 10% of that contingency amount each year, and then unless there is an approval of the board and there's a need of that. Sometimes when you're looking at the county treasurer's office, as you know, we sell TANs. We're not going to this year because we do have enough in our cash funds at the county, but a lot of times we have to sell TANs because the state doesn't pay us until July for a rollover, and so a lot of times we have not enough cash to make payroll, and so we either have to utilize TANs or registered warrants. As you saw, I had some information on registered warrants up there. So we sell TANs because we don't have enough cash sometimes to make payroll on that because of the delay of the state. So it's really important for us to have cash in our account to make sure we can make payroll, and if not, we utilize our TANs or we utilize the registered warrants to make those payments. So cash is kind of something we have to manage on a regular basis, not only here internally, but we also work with an outside agency when we use our TANs, when we work with the county
So
on
Lana,
registered warrants.
TANs, we're just borrowing money to cover.
Yes, we're borrowing money to cover so that we can make payroll because of how the cash flow comes in based on the grants and the information that comes in.
Thank you. So let's go now to our truth and taxation hearing. Mrs. Berry.
All right. Madam President, members of the board, tonight there's a truth and taxation hearing related to adjacent ways. This has been in place. This is my 23rd year in public education, and this has been in place every year that I've been in here for 23 years. But if you ask the board to approve a tax, the only tax rate that the board can actually approve, an increase I should say, is related to adjacent ways. And so every year our board makes a decision if they would like to tax for adjacent ways. So like I talked about earlier, the state sets a qualifying tax rate and voters approve overrides and bonds, but the one thing the board can do is increase taxes related to adjacent ways. So there is a publication that was in the newspaper that talks about an increase of a tax. In a sense, on a $100,000 home, it would cost $7 to fund adjacent ways. We're asking for $2.5 million. That tax has to be paid off in 1 year. It's not like a bond where you can pay it off in multiple years. You pay it off in 1 year. And so our truth and taxation hearing is based off of a $100,000 home that would cost $7.18. 30 cents is part of our not our adjacent ways, but as part of a dropout prevention. We have $107,000 that was approved a couple decades ago for dropout prevention. That is taxed to our taxpayers, and we continue to get that. And the rest of the portion is for adjacent ways. So tonight we're going over that piece. It's a small portion of the overall primary tax, but the law requires us to do a truth in taxation hearing and then ask our board to approve it. It's part of the budget that you approved. It's underneath the adjacent ways line item in the budget, and it's something that we bring to you for your approval. And it's also something we have a hearing on in case we have public that want to comment on it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Can you come up to the, yep, there we go.
Lana, this is actually about the budget one. What are TANs? That's my first question. And then the second one, as far as like the registered warrants or selling TANs or however you phrased it, do we get charged interest when we do those things? So not only are we waiting for the state to fund us, but we're also getting charged interest while we wait.
Sure, great question. So a couple of different things. So on TANs, they're it's a tax anticipation note. So ultimately, we know that we'll get funded by the state, and they're allowing us to, in a sense, get a loan. So ultimately, they have it. They sell it out on the market, or they sell it to our county sometimes too, and they allow us to use those dollars so that we can pay our health insurance, for example, and all the expenditures that we have up front when we don't get paid by the state yet because there's a delay in that. And so we borrow against that. And yes, do we get charged in interest? But the one thing that we're allowed to do is add that interest to line 7 in our budget. We get to pay for interest expense or registered warrants. So it is a line item we can increase in our budget. It's something that the legislature has allowed for us to do. And I saw Mrs. Pollock here. Thank you, Ms. Pollock. I know the legislature fought really hard for us. So everybody at the legislature, we appreciate everybody who fought for historic education. Sorry, I didn't see you. Hope that answers your question. Did that answer your question? Okay.
All right. Okay.
Did you also have a question about registered warrants, or was that it?
I think part of that, so that's a good question. The registered warrants are also part of just same thing with interest on that. So we get to claim any interest we have on a registered warrant also, and expenditures for those warrants we get to add to our budget, and so that increases our budget capacity. They've allowed for that, knowing that there's a possibility we'll have to do both.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Berry. We appreciate all of the effort that both you and your staff have put in to really kind of at the last minute make all these changes so that we can actually get this in by the deadline. With the legislature adjourning so late and the budget coming out so late, I know that it took a lot of your time and your staff's time to go over this and make the adjustments so that we could have it for this meeting tonight. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you, because Heather Caviar and Lauren Randall and Ben Prost put a lot of time into, along with other members. So I'm very appreciative of my staff, so thank you very much.
Thank you. We will next go on to our citizen comments, and we will first start with Mr. Terry Locke, who will be summarizing the comments that were presented online tonight, and then we'll go in. We have one speaker for this evening.
Well, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Narducci. As a courtesy, provide an opportunity for the public to submit citizen comments electronically on any topic every week. This week, one person submitted 2 comments. Our feedback related to governing board meetings. Submitting comments electronically provides our governing board members time to read and prepare prior to the meeting. This format also provides the board an opportunity to ask clarifying questions to the administration. You have the submissions verbatim for your consideration. They're also available on the website for public review.
Thank you. And our time limit will be 3 minutes for this evening.
Thank you, Madam President. During public comments, members of the governing board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to state statute, action taken as a result of public comments is limited to directing staff to review the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. The board president reserves the right to ensure that speakers present on topics that are within the board's jurisdiction. Everyone is asked to present their comments comments in a respectable and courteous manner. Profanity or threats of harm will not be tolerated. Our first speaker and only speaker tonight is Kurt Rohrs of Chandler, who would like to discuss the budget.
Thank you. Again, my name is Kurt Rohrs. I'm a parent in this district. I want to talk to you tonight about budget transparency. Just for a review for the general public, the district's revenue is derived from several sources: state-based base level funding from roughly 50% income tax and 50% property tax collections. Another taxpayer-approved override amount specific to the district, in addition to base level funding, but also derived from property taxes, local property taxes, and also additional state and federal grants. Traditional budget process appears to be to collect all available revenues, then budget these revenues to various spending accounts, whether the funds are needed or not. There is scant communication with the public regarding the actual spending priorities of the district. There does not appear to be any distinction between essential and non-essential programs. Taxpayers that provide this district this funding have very little idea of what you're doing and why. The lack of transparency is concerning. Some people may consider this an attempt to obfuscate or conceal budget issues. It certainly does not engender a solid trust in district financial management. I would recommend that the board reject their traditional revenue-based budget as unsuitable, have it reconstructed as a needs-based budget based on clear priorities. The discretionary override authorization so graciously provided by local taxpayers should only be used as a buffer to cover identified spending priorities over and above base funding levels. Unused portions should be left with the taxpayers. I would like to remind the district this is not your money. It is provided for your use by the taxpayers to whom you are fully accountable. Transparency means clearly telling us what you're doing and why. Please redirect your approach to budgeting according to your needs and not simply how much revenue is available. The taxpayers deserve this consideration. Thank you.
That concludes our citizens' comments for this evening, and we will move on to our consent agenda, which will be presented by Mr. Narducci this evening. Mr. Narducci.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We have monetary gifts request the approval, and the monetary gifts generously donated to Chandler Schools totaling $11,702.37. Under copy of revisions to policy DJE purchasing, district administration is requesting that the proposed revisions to policy DJE bidding, purchasing, and procedures. This was presented as information at the June 22nd, 2022 board meeting. After discussion, board members requested a change for the job order construction contract to be lowered from $3 million to $2 million. Request approval of the proposed policy DJE bidding, purchasing procedures that reflect that amount change. Under consent agenda item 5.03, 2022-2023 IGA with CUSD and Maricopa County Community College District for dual enrollment courses. The intergovernmental agreement between CUSD and Maricopa County Community College District for dual enrollment courses for the 22-23 school year is provided for your approval. Board approval authorizes the superintendent to take such further action and execute such documents to carry out the intention of this agreement. 5.04 Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association High School Aviation STEM Curriculum Adoption, CTE Air Transportation Program, CTEC Drone Operator Courses. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association High School Aviation STEM Curriculum offers comprehensive curriculum aligned to Common Core State Standards, Next Generation Science Standards, and CTE standards. The OPA curriculum will be used specifically for the Career and Technical Education Air Transportation Program, which will be a part of the CTEC Drone Operator courses for grades 9 through 12. The information was presented to the board on April 27th, 2022, in accordance with ARS 15-721. The textbook was placed on display for the 60-day review period for comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center starting April 28th, 2022. There were no public comments. 5.05 IGA Kyrene Print Shop requests board approval to renew the attached IGA with Kyrene School District to provide printing services for the district on an as-needed basis. 5.06 IFB 16-23-23 white copy paper. An IFB was issued by Chandler Unified School District on AZ Purchasing for the purchase of 8x5 by 11 20-pound or 20-weight 92 bright white copy paper. 3 vendors responded: Contract Paper Group, Office Depot Business Solutions, and Kelly Spicers. Request board approval for the award of IFB 16-23-23 to Kelly Spicers to provide 8,400 cases of white copy paper at $40.40 per case. The total amount, including tax, is $365,830.08. Due to chain supply issues, there has been an increase in pricing and difficulty for vendors to hold delivery dates. The last purchase in January of 2022 was $30.99 per case, with a total amount of $260,316, including tax. So you can see how much that increased in such a short time. 5.07, contract renewal, RFP 49-22-26, online tutoring programs. The district is requesting approval to renew CUSD SAVE contract number 49-22-26 online tutoring program to Link Systems International Incorporated, NetTutor and Kesson Group Services Incorporated, Schoolie for the 22-23 school year. The district originally awarded the request for proposal on November 10th, 2021 as a 1-year contract with up to 4 one-year renewable options. The solicitation was issued as a SAVE cooperative proposal. The district has chosen to use Link System as our vendor, which was approved on June 22nd, 2022 with an estimated spending of $1 million. However, since this was done as a SAVE cooperative contract, Chandler Unified School District is seeking board approval to renew the contract with Kesson Group Services as well, since it may be utilized by the SAVE members district. The recommendation is compliant with the school district procurement rules. It is in the district's best interest to renew that contract. 5.08 contract renewal, RFP 65-22-26. Post-retirement deferred compensation plan provider. The district is requesting approval to renew CUSD SAVE contract RFP number 66-22-26. Post-retirement deferred compensation plan provider consultant to Precision Retirement Group for the 22-23 school year. The district originally awarded the request for proposal on December 8th, 2021. Precision Retirement Group provides 401A, 401H, 457 and or 403B or medical trust options for post-retirement payments. The recommendation is compliant with the school district's procurement rules. It is in the district's best interest to renew this contract. 5.09 contract renewal, RFP 164-19-24 automated accounts payable solution. The district is requesting approval to renew CUSD SAVE contract number 164-19-24, automated accounts payable solutions to Commerce Bank for the 22-23 school year. The district originally awarded the request for proposal back on June 12th, 2019. The district currently has over 400 participating vendors with an annual spending volume of $14 million and receives approximately $175,000 annually in rebates. This recommendation is compliant with the school's district procurement rules. It is in the district's best interest also to renew this contract. 510 is RFP 18-23-24, high-low temperature equipment maintenance and repair. A request for proposal. RFP was issued by the Chandler Unified School District on AZ Purchasing seeking vendor for high-low temperature equipment maintenance and repair. 5 vendors responded and 2 were awarded. Masters Mechanical high temperature equipment and reliable refrigeration for the low temperature equipment. Per AAC R7-2-1024, the district reserves the right to make a multiple award to more than one supplier. A committee of 3 evaluators evaluated the responses based on the evaluation's criteria A summary of the evaluation is included for your review. The high-low temp maintenance and repair contract will be for 1 year, with the option to renew on an annual basis for 4 additional years. Request board approval for the award of RFP 18-23-27, high-low temp maintenance and repair, in the amount of $375,000 for the 22-23 fiscal year. 5.11, approval of the 2022-23 supplementary resource material. Chandler Unified School District uses resources aligned to the Arizona state standards in order to meet the diverse needs of our students. The supplementary resource material list of all grades and content areas for the 22-23 school year is presented annually for approval. According to board policy, IJJ, textbook supplementary materials selection and adoption, the board must also approve the deletion and removal of previously adopted supplementary resource material. The list of the resources no longer used in COSD is presented for approval. Item 8.12, diploma seals. The Arizona State Board of Education has approved 4 diploma seals that recognize high school students who achieve proficiency in fine arts, civic literacy, world language, and personal finance. Students are recognized with the seal on their diploma and a notation on their transcripts. The first 2 seals are administered by the Arizona Department of Education Office of Social Studies Education, and the third seal is administered by the Arizona Department of Education Office of Arts Education. The application process requires documentation that the LEA or the district governing board has approved participation in the State Seal of Arts Proficiency Program. Board approval is requested for continued participation in the 4 seal programs. Further information can be found in the attached document, as well as an update of the district participation in the 4th seal offered, the Seal of Biliteracy, which began in the 2017-2018 school year. Item 5.13 is community education stipends. We have a revised salary schedule for community education. Human Resources and Community Education have reviewed current stipends for intercession activities and camps and are below market value in stipends. The changes are recommended for approval in order to address areas that need to be moved. All increases are funded by community education as the funding source. And our last one, 5.14, is Human Resources. We ask you to approve the employment separation and compensation as attached.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Could I please get a motion on the consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 The motion carries. We will now move on to our action items, and the first one is the approval of the 22-23 school district annual expenditure budget. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, in accordance with Arizona Revised Statute, the district has advertised the preliminary budget and is requesting that the board, after tonight's public hearing, adopt the school district annual expenditure budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Could I please get a motion?
I'd like to recommend that we approve the 2022-2023 school district annual expenditure budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions from the board? I know we spent quite a bit of time on that this evening during the hearing, so the public hearing. So if there's no comments or questions from the board, all those in favor of adopting the 22-23 school district annual expenditure budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of truth and taxation increase for fiscal year 2022-2023, and that is Mrs. Berry again.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the governing board approve the truth and taxation increase as outlined in the attachment. As you know, too, after speaking with each of you, we will be doing a ratification after we do the salary raises on the 27th. We will also do another hearing and a ratification of the truth and taxation notice also on that night.
Thank you. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the truth and taxation tax increase as outlined in the notice.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on this item? All right. We do need to have a roll call vote. So Mrs. Nye, could you do our roll call?
Barb Moxon,
Yes.
Jason Pollock,
Yes.
Laura Bruner,
Yes.
Lindsay Love,
Yes.
Joel Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries. Next, we have a revised pupil transportation purchase previously approved on July 14th in 2021. Mrs. Berry.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, Canyon State Bus Sales has added a surcharge of $8,500 plus tax per Bluebird bus on order prior to May 17th, 2022. Bluebird Corporation has incurred significant increases due to production costs and other outside challenges that resulted in a price increase for buses. The board approved the purchase of 28 buses on July 14th, 2021, utilizing Mojave Contract 18F CSBS 0904. Unfortunately, due to supply chain issues, the buses are still being manufactured. In order to execute the current purchase that was approved by the board on July 14th, 2021 to Canyon State Bus Sales, a surcharge must be added to the overall purchase. The district is seeking approval to increase the total amount of bus purchase by $238,000 surcharge plus $20,230 in taxes for a total of $258,230 utilizing Mojave Contract 18F CSBS-0904.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Could I get a motion on this item?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the increase to the total of the bus purchase by $238,000 surcharge plus $20,230 taxes for a total of $258,230 utilizing the Mojave Contract 18F CSBS 0904. Very hard to read that.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mrs. Berry? Yes.
I just have one. So, can you tell me about the legality of, like, we put into a contract and then now they want to change it? Can we do that to them?
Yes.
Like, it doesn't seem fair. Yeah.
Great question. And actually, Mr. Olive had the same question, so I'm glad you both brought that up. So that is a question we asked. And so originally we got information, we got letters from them. There's what's called, and I hadn't remembered this term since I was in college, but it's called force majeure. And it's because if there is a hurricane or a tornado or a disease or something that there is, and unfortunately it's in every single one of our contracts. So it's number 7 in a contract of legal terms in our contract. So what happened was all the buses are saying that that's taken place because of COVID. And if you know, Ford and Chevy canceled a number of their orders. So we had the opportunity to cancel the order. They wrote us and said you can cancel it by June 22nd, or if you want to cancel the order, or you can increase the order by $8,500. So unfortunately, because that's in the contract, Mojave said, yes, we're going to increase that, but they're literally having the same problems. They're not able to get, it's the same situation everybody is. They're having a hard time getting supplies in. They're increasing drastically. They would rather cancel our order than probably utilize the stuff that they do have to produce our vehicles for us, but we still want those 28 buses. They are on such delay of getting buses. It used to be 6 months. It's a good year and maybe a year and a half before we get a bus now. Thanks.
So Lan, I'm a little confused. So we have an outstanding order, and then this is another order.
So the one we're talking about right now was the one that the board approved a year ago. We still haven't received those buses.
And are we ordering new ones now?
We are. That'll be the next board agenda item. But
Okay.
this one is to increase the price of the ones that we ordered a year ago due to the surcharge that they have. Now, across the states, it was between 5,000 and 10,000. Ours in Arizona was 8,500. That was the agreed upon amount. But unfortunately, feel like we don't really have any options unless we want to cancel all 28. It's pretty unfair, but it's kind of what's happening, I think, across the nation. Does that answer your question? Mr. Olive, was that good for you also? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Love, do you have anything? Okay. So obviously, we want the buses, and there really is no other source for these buses that we could get an alternate brand that would meet our needs.
Right, great question. So there's only 3 bus manufacturers in the country. So we are stuck with the 3 types of buses. There's International buses, Bluebirds, and Thomas buses. So unfortunately, you need to go with one of those 3. They're in 3 different locations in the United States. And pretty much you have to buy a bus from one of those three. So at this point, we're going to keep with the contract we do have because as you're going to see in a minute, they're continuing to go up. The prices are just going up and up each year.
Okay. Yes, and Ms. Love, you do have a question now.
Yeah, I'm just
Thank you.
thinking about it. How might this delay impact us and our students?
Sure. That's a great question, too. So we've been very fortunate that our voters have approved bonds over the last 3 decades because I've been here, this is my 9th year here, or almost my 10th year here in the district, and we've been able to purchase buses every single year due to the 2015 bond, the 2017 bond, and now the 2019 bond just recently. So we're fortunate because we've been able to purchase buses, but we have done a good job, and Dave Thiel and his team have scrapped every kind of part out of every bus we have. You're going to see 40 buses that are going to go, that we're going to dispose of. We're finally getting to dispose of them, but he's held on to them because he keeps taking all the parts out of them to keep our other buses working. But we are more fortunate than most school districts in that we do have bond funds and we've been able to purchase new buses over the years, so we're in a lot better shape. I feel bad for growing districts right now. They can't find the buses, and if they don't have bond dollars, like Mrs. Mosling said earlier, there's no money in there for transportation. So unless you have bond dollars, it's hard to buy them, and then it's really hard to get a bus right now. So we feel like we're more fortunate because we've been purchasing buses every single year, and our bond dollars have went towards that.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the increase in the total amount of the bus purchase, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. And next we have pupil transportation purchase, not purpose. Pupil transportation purchase. Oh my gosh, I can't say it right today. I am really. Mrs. Berry.
And this is, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Worth, this is the one I think you were talking about. After careful review and research, the Transportation Administration team recommends purchasing buses for replacement due to aging and costly repairs. So 4 Bluebird 84-passenger buses, replacing 4 of the 12 CNG. 12 Bluebird 48-passenger special education buses with wheelchair lifts. 2 Bluebird 63-passenger special education buses with wheelchair lifts. And 3 Microbird 14-passenger activity buses and 1 Microbird 14-passenger activity bus with a wheelchair lift. From Canyon State Sales, utilizing Mojave Contract 18F CSBS 0904. A trade-in of 39 decommissioned buses is also included.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry.
You're welcome.
May I please get a motion?
Yes. Madam President, I would like to make a motion that we approve the purchase of 22 vehicles for a total of $4,141,585.56, utilizing Mojave Contract 18F-CSBS-0904. Canyon State Bus Sales minus the trade-in value of $41,000 for the 39 decommissioned buses.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any questions for Mrs. Berry?
I do.
Yes, Mr. Worth.
Mrs. Berry, I notice when I see the buses, I mean, you have bus routes, and I know you have to have buses for the bus routes, but a lot of times you don't see a lot of kids. So are we trying to go with smaller buses, or are they just still not cost effective?
Great question. So special education buses are half of our fleet, and so there's usually a less number of kids on a special ed bus than a regular ed bus. But depending on where we pick them up or where we drop them off, if they get closer to the school, there's more kids on there as they drop off or pick up. Depends on where you see them in their route. So if it's the first kid picked up on the bus route, you're only going to see the first few kids on the bus until they pick up everybody else, and then they drop off. Same thing when they go to drop off. And as soon as they leave the school, you're going to see a full bus, and then as they start to drop them off, you're going to see less and less kids. So it depends on where you see the bus on the road, depending on where they're on with their route. We have actually reduced the number of routes. We reduced, I think, 16 routes last year. We're trying to maximize every route we have. Some of them we've had to extend routes, and that's because we don't have enough staff.
My question is, are we reducing the size?
We aren't on regular ed. We have bought 84 passenger. We're only purchasing 4 of those. Most of them are special education buses that we're trying to purchase and replace right now.
I do have
I guess.
one question.
Mrs. Brunner.
So looking at, the different buses that are anywhere between like 114,000 per bus to 229, are there other options besides the trade-in that we're getting? So it looks like it's like slightly more than $1,000 per bus trade-in, and then we're spending 113 on a new one. Are there other options besides this group's trade-in that we could maximize what we get for the ones we turn in?
Right.
Are there any salvage groups out there? I don't know. It just seems like a really low amount for what we're paying for a new one.
Great question. So the way we can dispose of vehicles or equipment is two ways. You can do it on a trade-in, or you can do it through your surplus auction, where you have an auction and then people bid on those pieces. Most of these buses have been completely stripped, mostly, and then the cost sometimes to take them off is more expensive than just trading them in. Because when they trade them in, they have to come get them, haul them. There's an expense and all of that too. But it is hardly anything that we're getting for each of these buses. But Dave has done a great job of stripping everything out of there, getting all the parts he can use. He's been using them, and I've been really pushing him to get rid of buses, because I'm like, we need to clear those out and not maintain them and not have them on our sites.
Mrs. Berry, I'll just make a comment. On the list of buses that are being traded in, it looks like at least 2/3 of them have to be towed out, and they're not even running because they either don't have the parts or the wheels or whatever they're missing. So it does look like they've been cannibalized quite thoroughly. So are there any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of purchasing the 22 vehicles and trading in the other 39 decommissioned buses, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we're going to go on to our information items, and our first is the year-end summary of out-of-state student travel. And that is for last year, the 2021-22 school year. Dr. Gilbert.
Madam President, members of the board, for your information, please see the attached year-end summary of the out-of-state trips for student travel for the 2021-2022 school year. This includes past completed trips along with confirmed approved trips through June 30th.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Do our board members have any questions or comments for our Dr. Gilbert? I will make one comment. What I did see what I noticed on the listing that you gave us, that the vast majority of the trips were either spot on in their estimates as to how much they were going to have as an out-of-pocket cost for the students, or they were significantly lower or actually zero cost for the students. So I was very pleased to see that people were really trying to be conscientious about the cost of these trips.
Thank you for sharing that. It is one of the things that the board has asked for, and we've been working with the schools to make sure they do their due diligence as they're planning these trips.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the
Nope.
board? Okay. Next, we have our student activities, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reports. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, the student activities, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reports for the months ending July 2021 through June 2022 are provided for your review.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Are there any questions or comments? I have the same question. I noticed there's a little bit of red in all of these reports, and I know that we still have an encumbrance period, so will all of those pretty much get rectified by the end of the encumbrance period?
Great question, Ms. Marsden. Yes, every single one will. So over the next month and a half, we will work to clean those up. So sometimes they're just coded to the wrong fund, and there needs to be money that's moved and adjusted. So all of them will be cleaned because they're required to be before we finish the annual financial report.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Next, we have our road agenda roadmap. Or agenda roadmap, sorry. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is August 10th, and we will be looking at space utilization and the portrait of the learner that we've had a lot of community input on. And I'm sure Dr. Nance is going to go over a lot of that community input with us. So,
Madam President, we're also working this week on getting the rest of the study sessions that the board has asked for on the calendar, so we'll have them on there by your August 10th meeting.
thank you. Great. And just as a comment, that is now for the 22-23 school year, so it does go out for all of our board meetings for the year. Mr. Narducci, superintendent comments time.
Well, Madam President, members of the board and public that are here, and our cabinet that's back there, appreciate all of you guys being here and supporting the district and working this evening. We're 1 week away from the start of school. It seems like we really didn't have a summer, so apologize for that. I guess we'll work with that calendar committee this year for the next 5 years. But we did get a 7-week. We had July 20th circled, but it just didn't seem like it'd be coming that quickly. And so we are right around the corner and we'll be ready. Human Resources, Dr. Nance and her team, I just want to compliment them for onboarding more than over 300 new teachers. And from meeting those new teachers and from being able to speak with them, and it was a really nice job. They did a fantastic job getting teachers in, and we have just a few more to finish up. If anybody in the audience teaches science, let's talk to you afterwards. If you're not employed by Chandler and you're high school qualified, we may talk to you. We also have returning teachers that came back, and many of our support staff are back this week. Our support services team has been very busy over the 7 weeks. I don't want to call it summer because, you know, when I was first a teacher and an administrator down in Tucson, we had 2 months almost, like a month and a half, 2 months to off. We get a lot of work done in 7 weeks, and they're just amazing. So our support staff, Lennaberry under, with Tom Dunn and JD, and they've just done a super job of getting out there. And what we don't have finished, we have about 4 or 5 days to get done in a weekend. So it's amazing what they can do. All that's left really is for our students to remember that their alarm clocks need to be set for Wednesday and to be ready for the buses. We have a lot of choices in Chandler. We're a premier district of choice. And so if you haven't, and if this is for the public, you haven't registered for 22-23, it's not too late. Our school staff can help you get the seat that you want and deserve in Chandler Unified School District. Or if you'd like to find the school with a perfect fit for your child, we're here. Give the district office a call, and we'll work with you as a concierge to get to the school that you would like to attend in Chandler. So please take us up on that. We have a lot of parents that call in and say, "What are my choices, and how can I get in there?" And if we can fit and we can accept open enrollments, we will. We don't have much in the way of sports highlights during the summer typically, but I think this one is an exception. Jennifer Seo of Hamilton, we've talked about her before, and she plays golf. She rallied to win the National High School Golf Invitational. Jennifer rallied by 2 strokes, entering the final day in 6th place overall, but shot a magical 5 under par in the final round to capture the title of the Pinehurst Resort in North Carolina last month. Jennifer's not only the first from CUSD to win the tournament, but also the first from Arizona. Just amazing things. I don't know how they do it. It's just amazing. I always think, can I just hit the ball off the tee and get it past the tee in front of me? And it's just amazing what our kids do. Today was a high-energy special day as we kicked off our teacher return with 4 welcome home rallies, complete with professional development speaker, vision setting, and a little fun. It was great seeing our certified staff return from summer break and ready to start the new school year. We are inspired and eager to begin the new school year on July 20th, 2022, and they are all set to go. Operation Backpack is a back-to-school program that we do, and it's this Saturday. So if anybody is in need of supplies or backpacks, it's held this Saturday. A volunteer group called For Our City will be distributing backpacks and school supplies from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m. July 16th in the student parking lot, and I believe that's at Chandler High School. And so our students need to be with them in the cars, but it's a fast process to keep the air conditioner on and just go through. They've been doing that for a few years. We have a number of staff who assist with the project, and we anticipate serving approximately 3,000 Chandler families this Saturday. So this Saturday, families at Chandler High, and it's a walkthrough. So if you need any more information on it, please call us, and we'll make sure that we take care of you. I would also like to just also give a heartfelt thanks to our legislators for fighting to support K-12 education. The historical investment in K-12 is appreciated, and it will be put to good use in supporting our students and staff. Representative Jennifer Pollock, who's in the audience right now, thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for having the courage to support education and public education, because we get it right. Also, would like to thank Senator Sean Bowie, Representative Jeff Winiger, Senator J.D. Mesnard, Representative Mitzi Epstein, and Jennifer Germain. Thank you for supporting COSD. And for our other legislators across the state, thank you for supporting education across the state of Arizona. It does lift, and it is deserved. And so thank you very much, and we will use those resources wisely. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Board member comments. Mr. Worth, do you want to start?
Yes. One of the things that I've watched over the years is the community always wants us to run like a business. And we have done that. We've tried to run like a business. And every business that I know that's successful has a surplus. And I think it would be foolish to eliminate that surplus. In addition, it took us 40 years to build that contingency, so we need to be careful on how quickly we spend that. I do think we need a policy on how and when we use that surplus. Also need to remind the rest of the world that we're still funded 49th in the nation, and any additional funding needs to go to our staff. We have a shortage of teachers, and this district has been fortunate enough basically to have mostly certified teachers. So we run like a business, and we're proud of it, and I don't think we should change the way we do things.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Ms. Love.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge we have some 2022 graduates in the audience right now, and I ran into them this summer when I did an education panel, and I was like, hey, I handed you your diploma. But they started a student coalition. I believe it's called the Arizona Student Coalition, or the Make Arizona or Keep Arizona Blue Student Coalition. And so it was really great to see our students who are civically engaged and involved and out there. I think some of them are working on political campaigns this cycle, which is exciting. And it's truly a testament to the great work that we do in this district to support our students in whatever they want to do. So thank you for showing up tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Mr. Olive.
I too would like to say thank you to Ms. Pollock for helping out with getting some more money for schools. I was driving down one of the freeways today, I-10 or somewhere like that, and there was a billboard that said, "Teach in Texas, Dallas area, $102,000 starting salary." It's kind of incredible that somebody can make that kind of investment in teachers, but we don't have any oil wells, but it's great that we are trying to do better by our teachers and trying to take care of our students. We're not there yet, but we'll get there one of these days.
Thank you, Mr. Olive. Mrs. Bruner.
So as usual, the things on my list Frank covered already, because he's very thorough. Yeah. And I did want to mention at the staff rally today how I never realized how entertaining Mr. Narducci can be. Yeah. You were very dynamic speaker with leg kicks. Yeah, there were leg kicks involved. So anyway, I just wanted to welcome all the new teachers. There was a wonderful new teacher event last week. And welcome back to all the staff who have committed to our students in this time period where so many folks are leaving education all across, not just the state, but the nation. Those who have come back and are committed to our students, I just wanted to thank you. And also, I wanted to also give a shout out for our city for organizing the project Back to School. And I hope we can make sure that everyone hears about that. I think they're doing a pretty good job, but if everyone could spread the word to anyone who might need school supplies this Saturday at Chandler High. Thanks.
Mrs. Bruner, do you know, or Mr. Narducci, do you know if you have to pre-register for this event? No, it's
I don't think so. I think you need to be in the car, and what they have said is the children have to be in the car that are receiving the backpack too. So make sure that they have their children with them and that their air conditioner is running because it's going to be hot.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure so that there wouldn't be some accidental turnaways or something due to not having a registration, so.
They always
that's great.
collect more than they actually give that day, so they let the district know what the surplus is, and then we also have additional backpacks that we're able to work with our families.
Wonderful, thank you. I also want to thank our legislatures and Ms. Pollack, thank you so much for your support. We do appreciate the additional funding and the additional, especially for looking at the special ed groups and providing additional funding for that. So thank you very, very much for your efforts. I'm excited to have the new school year start, and a lot of new faces at the schools and a lot of old faces too with our returning teachers. So I think it's going to be a really great year, and we do appreciate all the work that our teachers are putting in prior to the students coming, getting their classrooms ready, getting their teams together to talk about what they're going to be teaching and their lesson plans and everything else that goes into being prepared for the first day of school. So we're off and running. So thank you so much for coming this evening, and we will see you then, in August. Thank you again. Have a great evening. This meeting is adjourned.